Hello everyone, like I mentioned before in my Discord, I will do another open world PVE tier list video since many of you asked for it. Because last couple balance patches changed many things in the tier list video I made 8 months ago. For those who don't know what's the point of having open world builds, and the reason is to provide a solid build that's able to buff its own damage to maximize its DPS potential and able to self-heal and sustain by having stun breaks and condition removals. So you can explore open world content easily, like mini dungeons, side story events, or to farm collections or achievements that require to do specific events to kill some champions that usually you find no one around to help. Or if you just want to flex your dominance in open world by killing group of mobs or bosses easily while your guildmates looking at you with Pikachu face. I will tier list the specs based on their DPS potential and how comfortable to use it. With that being said, let's start. Dragon Hunter is a pure DPS spec, but sadly, Dragon Hunter cannot generate its own boons, like 25 might to maximize its own damage, neither able to heal itself. It's a great spec for endgame contents like raids and fractals, since the party will provide all the boons and the heal for it. But when it came to open world, it won't have this luxury. So Dragon Hunter is F tier. Firebrand was a fine spec that able to use tomes to DPS, heal, or blocking incoming damage. But ever since ANET reworked Firebrand by making it limited to a specific number of tome pages, and now they also nerfed the damage of the Firebrand quite a lot in the last balance patch, which made the spec a lot weaker than it used to be. So Firebrand is D tier. Willbender is the best spec for Guardian when it came to solo play in open world, since it's able to land heavy condition burst and have access to alacrity to recharge your DPS and healing skills faster. And like I mentioned in the update video, Willbender got a great buff since November balance patch. Now it's able to use all the FS skills to DPS, generate boons, and blocking incoming damage at the same time, which made it less complicated to use, more fun and engaging. So Willbender is A tier. Next is Reaper. Reaper received a lot of loves in the last couple balance patches, which made me make a Reaper build video, and got even more buffs after the video release. Now Reaper is extremely powerful with high DPS, life force regen, and it's the easiest spec to use, since the only thing you need to do is to stay in Reaper Shroud to spam 3 buttons. So Reaper is legendary tier. Scourge is one of the easiest specs to use and it has a decent DPS, resulting of many memed videos about it. But ever since ANET nerfed the curse trait that convert 10% of your condition damage to heal to 5%, Scourge became a squishier than it used to be, but still, Scourge is a pretty solid to fight in range and to hit multiple locations by spreading its shades. So Scourge is A tier. Harbinger is a pretty strong spec, and ever since the last balance patch that I made an update video for, Harbinger became pretty strong with high DPS and less complicated to manage its blight stacks, but require you to fight in melee range and keep using your elixirs of cooldown to keep the blight at 25 stacks to increase your damage and the passive heal you receive per second. So Harbinger is S tier. Next is Tempest. Tempest is a very forgiving early spec, thanks to its heals and passive defense. But sadly, Tempest have a slow burst window, which make it take time to kill mobs, and because overload animation take time to cast, you can't use other skills to build up the damage, resulting a low damage output. So Tempest is C tier. Weaver. I made a build video for Weaver, for those who want an easy DPS rotation for early enjoyers. Weaver have the highest damage output compared to its other specs, and able to cleave mobs faster with decent passive heal as long you keep attacking. So Weaver is A tier. Catalyst, in my opinion, is the best early spec for open world. It has a really good damage output, passive heals, and high defense abilities, like barriers. It can overcome many hard encounters with hard bosses or hard events. But Catalyst is pretty hard to use compared to its other specs, since it requires you to pay attention to its rotation and its floating orbs, and for that, Catalyst is S tier instead of being legendary tier. Next is Berserker. Since last tier list video, Berserker got reworked and buffed to its traits and skills. So I made a Berserker build video to deal a decent burning damage, generate wounds, and heal itself to full HP, as long as it keep casting its burst attacks. also being immune to incoming damage for 4 seconds every 20 seconds, thanks to its elite skill combined with defense straight line. So Berserker is B tier. Spellbreaker is a fun and engaging warrior spec that uses daggers and axes to deal decent melee damage. Also its ability to remove boons from foes like protection that reduce incoming damage. Just like Berserker, it's able to generate boons and heal itself as long as it keeps attacking. So Spellbreaker is B tier. Bladesworn. It is my favorite and my main spec that I've been using ever since EOD released. The spec have a really good damage and able to kill group of mobs in one single attack. Also convert 8% of its high damage to healing, as well as removing conditions in the process. Personally, I was going to put Bladesworn in legendary tier, but sadly the spec is pretty tricky to learn, and many new players might struggle to use it, since it requires understanding where and when to use Dragon Slash, since it cannot move while casting it. So Bladesworn is S tier. Next is Druid. Druid is a pure ranger healing spec that usually used in in-game content as a boon heal support. Since the entire spec only focuses on healing, it can be modified to use short bow for bleeding build to heal itself massively to stay alive, but after all the damage will be really low to kill mobs faster. So Druid is D tier. Soul Beast is a good spec that able to merge with Pit to gain bonus stats, perma quickness and 25 might to maximize its DPS potential. The spec has a decent damage and passive heal, so Soul Beast is B tier. Untamed is the strongest ranger spec for open world. It has the highest damage output among all builds, and its ability to generate all game boons to itself permanently. Also refresh the cooldown to all of your skills, including the healing skill, as long as you keep casting its utility and weapon CC skills off cooldown. But sadly, the spec is the hardest one to use and very stressful, also unforgiving for mistakes. So instead of being legendary tier, Untamed is A tier. Next is Daredevil. Daredevil is the same as Dragon Hunter, a spec that focuses on pure damage, but not able to heal itself or generate its own boons, resulting a low damage output. So Daredevil is F tier. Deadeye is a single target spec that deal damage and generate boons by attacking the market target. It have both good damage and passive heal, but it's hard to use because of the malice management to keep the boons always uptime, and because it has a very low cleave damage. So Deadeye is C tier. Spectre is the best thief spec since it have the highest damage compared to its other specs, also able to cleave group of mobs while in shroud form. The spec is pretty easy to use since you only need to use 3 weapon skills to damage, heal, generate wounds and barriers at the same time. Even though it has the highest damage compared to its other thief specs, Spectre damage isn't that great like other specs. So for that, Spectre is A tier because it's very easy to use. Next is Scrubber. Scrubber is a good elite spec for NG that able to use hammer to cleave group of mobs faster. But that's it. Scrubber was going to be a very good spec for open world, but thanks to ANET, they nerfed it by reducing its passive healings, which made it very squishy. So Scrubber is going to be D tier. Holosmith got a huge damage buff since last balance patch, which made the spec get a high damage output, also with decent self-healing after leaving Photon Forge form. But in return, Holosmith is a hard spec to use because it's easy to overheat, resulting to take high damage from overheating, also not able to use Photon Forge for a while in the process, which might kill you. So Holosmith is B tier. Mechanist is one of the easiest and the strongest specs for open world contents. The spec have a very good damage output, healing, condition removals, and stun breaks. Also have access to perma quickness and alacrity to make it more comfortable for you and your Jade mech to stay alive while dealing damage. So Mechanist is legendary tier. Next is Chronomancer. Chronomancer is the same as Dragon Hunter and Daredevil. The spec focus on either pure damage or full boon support. It cannot generate its own boons without losing a lot of DPS, or able to sustain itself. So Chronomancer is F tier. Mirage is one of the easiest specs to use, because you can get all the damage, boons, sustains by only spamming dodge. Every time you dodge, you cast an ambush attack, which is your main source of damage and boons. also to generate more clones to cast the same skill. I use this spec to solo endgame contents like struck missions, including Harvest Temple. So Mirage is legendary tier. Virtuoso, a spec that focuses on bleeding damage, but sadly it cannot generate boons without losing a lot of DPS. But at least it can convert small portion of its condition damage to healing. So Virtuoso is D tier. And finally, Revenant Specs. All Revenant Specs, Herald, Renegade, and Vindicator that I made use the same trait lines and armors that able to deal high damage. Also they can generate lot of boons, huge passive healings, barriers, and reduce incoming damage while in combat, which made all Revenant Elite specs pretty good and very forgiving for mistakes. So Herald, Renegade, and Vindicator are legendary tiers. That's it for today. Hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you want more details about the builds I made, check the video description, or if you have questions, feel free to join my Discord and ask me there. So take care and have a nice day.